Okay, I am here and I am going to talk about securing support because, as Sally and Ian have been saying, it is essential. And I'm going to go through the essentialness of this in 3 different ways. But I think if we can come out of this together with you believing that strategic support is an absolute priority for you and having even one idea of how you're going to secure this, then this remaining time that we have together will not have been wasted. And I wanted to start just with a little thought experiment to get you in the mood for understanding why this matters, starting with your organisation. And the question is everyone in your organisation still here and in the same job as when you started your URBACT project? Maybe a slide over this, but please just take a moment to think about this. Is everyone still here? And I can't see the results, but I would be very surprised to learn that people's teams have not changed. Nothing to do with how nice you all are to work with, but this is the way of the world. People change jobs, they grow and develop, directors move, go on to different departments and so on. And this is the first big risk that your wonderful emerging IAPs face, institutional change. The people who put in the application to URBACT, whose passion and ideas got this project going, may not be here, they may not have the teams or support around them. So you need to be prepared for that. Thought experiment number 2. Will you have a political election in your territory? Now? Next year? Maybe you just had one, so not within the next 5 years, or maybe no elections. Will there be an election? And again, I would be very surprised with one particular answer, no elections, because we are all lucky enough to live in European democracies and there will be change. It might be minor change, just re-election and a bit of a reshuffle. It might be major shift of party, complete change of direction. It could be planned, you know it's coming. It could happen overnight. All of these things have happened to access partners in the time we've been working together, but political change will definitely affect you and your IAP at some point. And third thought experiment for you, are you actually a funder in your territories? Do you spend money? Grant making programs, or do you commission work? Do you both? Are you lucky enough to have lots of money to give out? Just think about the money that you spend and give out. And having thought about that, are you giving out the same money this year that you gave out 2 years ago, or that you might give out in future? And I would be very surprised. And I like this graphic very much because not only does it have a load of grant funding type words on, buzzwords that we use a lot, shared vision, drill down, unprecedented, real-time issue, lower the temperature. We use these words over and again, these buzzwords, but it also has the reminder of the pandemic. Change can happen very fast as well as over time, and the relevance of your project is going to alter. And without relevance, you're not going to get anywhere. And think about this in terms of time frame of an URBACT project. Here's Access, January 2019, we come together. We're thinking about our experiences in 2018 to prepare our proposal for URBACT. We start the project formally in 2019. It's now January 22. We're no longer meeting in person. We're online due to the pandemic. So that's already 3 or 4 years worth of change. And these IAPs are looking forward 3, 5, maybe 10 years. So the strategic support that you're going to need is going to be shifting. The relevance of your project to current political priorities will change. And just some examples from my own experience, when I started in the public sector, we talked about equality. We don't talk about that so much anymore. We now talk about diversity, or as in the case of the Access project, we know diversity on its own isn't enough. You need to not only have diverse people and interests involved, but you need to welcome and include them when they're there, to empower them and make them feel part of things. So we talk about inclusion. And my absolute favourite is digital. So when I started in the public sector, we were giving out funds to film societies and festivals, and they all came to us saying the world is going digital and we need to create a website. Do you remember those days when having a website was the mark of being digital? Now our whole world operates digitally, and our political concern, our funding concern is with the digital divide. And I'm very curious to find out when that moment will come when the whole word digital just seems completely irrelevant. I'm sure our grandchildren will find it hilarious that we talked about digital as a thing. It just won't be a thing. But maybe our children won't. Maybe even next year's graduates won't see digital as a thing. So the relevance of your project, no matter how passionately conceived and well researched and integrated, will change. So you need your strategic support. And I know Sally and Ian were just going through some of the figures, but in the follow-up study that Regina delivered on IAP projects 2 years after, the lack of political will and leadership was the #1 issue, highlighted by national URBACT points, highlighted by respondents to the survey, cities who'd been working on their IAPs. The situation had shifted. With funders, with senior stakeholders, with citizens, they didn't have the support anymore. But despite the fact that that report shows us quite how important holding on strategic support is and quite how dangerous your situation is, there is also some really good news that I think we need to take from it in terms of how you can get this strategic support that you need. And the first one is that National URBACT points also recommended making mandatory getting your IAPs politically approved, getting it signed up as part of your city strategy. And a whopping 88% of URBACT projects had already accomplished that after 2 years. But I would ask you to think about that now. Get this approved now. And it takes time. You all know the slow turning processes of internal and political governments. You need to start thinking about how you're going to do this now to make sure that your IAP doesn't lose its relevance or become a victim of political change or even institutional change. Get it approved. Another great bit of good news, I think, from the report is that we've been talking about funding all through this e-university. And there's good news. Lots of people got their funding, but don't forget you don't need money to make things happen. And if you are making things happen, your IAP is being delivered. And if your IAP is being delivered and still involves people and is showing progress towards addressing your challenge, then it's moving forward and you will find it easier to get strategic support. And interestingly, 5% of cities didn't need any money at all, which is a reminder that you really can do a lot just with strategic support. So please think, as you're designing your IAPs now, about including some cost-free actions that you know you can deliver to show progress, to show people this is a real live document. And as a great example, I am recommending the Dunleary-Rathbone Change IAP, which you can find on the URBACT website. The link's there for you. And it's all about trying to change the approach to working with social and voluntary community groups. But if you have a look at some of their actions, they're largely unfunded. Look at the words they use: evaluating things, showcasing things, expanding awareness, exploring. All things that you can do with a committed team who know which direction they're going in, and all things which actually build support for you. So that, as an extension of the previous point, I think is another really important thing for you to be considering at the moment. Include the support building that you need to do in your action plans, whether that's some sort of event or regular check-ins or meetings. You'll know what to do. And that's the last bit of good news that I have taken out of Regina and Sally's excellent report. That actually, don't forget, you know how to do this. URBACT has been training us all in how to work in an integrated way, bringing in a wide range of stakeholders, people who care, people who you can demonstrate care about your project, to work together towards a solution. You've been taking them for walks and site visits. You've been building models with them out of Lego and doing drawing sessions and mapping sessions. You know how to do this, so keep doing it. Build that in. And if there's one simple way of doing it, I would say that's to maintain your ULG. If anyone questions whether this is still relevant and if people care, you can turn around and say, yes, Look at all these people who meet regularly because they care. They're monitoring us. They demonstrate that this project is important. Plus all of the other wonderful benefits that you get from that range of perspectives and inspiration and energy. And I know some of the other sessions have been talking about different ways you can do that, but include that in your action plan. Maintain your ULG. And as part of that ULG, you've all done some really great stakeholder mapping. So this is just a quick reminder of all of these strategic stakeholders that you need to keep on board with your project. Citizens and stakeholders, obviously. Colleagues, don't forget colleagues. They often have the money. If relevance shifts from your department, it may now be in transport. And if you're working with transport, you can keep moving forward. You can find the money. Decision makers and policy owners are obviously key to what we're thinking about today, but don't forget the future decision makers and policy owners thinking about political change. You need to find ways of including those not currently directly in power. It's not always easy, but we're going to talk about some ways to do it. Do plan to engage with them in some ways. Funders we've talked about a lot, and other cities, we're all here, but they can be key collaborators and points of reference. Look at what that city's doing. Wouldn't you like that to be in our city? Wouldn't that be a great part of your portfolio just here? We've been inspired to make change here. Always useful. And now we come on to the crux of the matter. How do you get this support? And everything that everyone has been saying about funding applies, of course, to strategic stakeholders. And everything that we'll say about strategic stakeholders applies just as much to your citizens, your businesses, your local organisation. But think in particular about two key groups: your politicians, your mayors, your opposition parties, and your senior decision makers internally, because ultimately they are going to be the people that, if you have their support, you're safe and secure. Though always remembering that if you've got your citizen support, your mayors are going to want to listen. So there's three different ways of getting support: informing people, just giving them information, keeping that going; inspiring people, winning hearts and minds; and aligning with people such that they feel you are essential. We're going to look at all three: inform, inspire, and align. And one of our access cities came up with a beautiful phrase to think about the problem of informing different stakeholders right at the start of the project. And Yogita in Vilnius said, the problem is they speak numbers and we speak colours. And it's really important to remember that. I just think it's just such a great phrase as well. Thank you again, Yogita. People need different types of information. Different people respond to different things in different contexts. And politicians and senior decision makers are no different, but they will use the information that you give them if you keep passing it on. So this remains absolutely critical. Sometimes they will need a big number. 55,000 people voted to deliver on this. 27% of the population don't care at all, so we're going to ignore it. Whatever those numbers are, sometimes a simple number is important, but other times it is the story of the one person whose life was changed, the story of how different things feel, passing on an anecdote. So you need to think about both. And there's three different types of information that you're going to need to share. One is reinforcing the problem. This issue that we've identified in our city is still live. So-and-so just published a report saying this is a global issue. We've just found that this is still happening. There are still homeless people with no shelter at night. You need to reinforce the problem. You also need to reinforce this point that people care about it and there's consensus around it. So it could be the number of people who've attended something, people who've voted for something, people who've taken part in something. Keep reinforcing the fact that people do care and that this matters. Even if the language changes, even if you're talking about inclusion rather than diversity, people still care about the same thing. And then that impact issue, that anecdote. So-and-so took part in our scheme and something wonderful has happened. We worked with a local community group to transform this building, and it's now become a magnificent centre for recycling and reuse. Whatever it is, those impact informations are critical. And what I would say is you need to think about sharing this information in at least 3 ways. If you're just doing it in one way, it's probably just passive. You're probably sending information out to your city's communications team. It's not really a big part of what you're doing. If you're doing it in 2 ways, maybe you're putting a bit of effort in. Maybe you have your own newsletter or hashtag or Facebook group or whatever. But still, it's not a big part of your work. So I'd ask you to check your planning and your work plans and your programming and make sure that you have information flowing out in at least 3 ways, because that means you are doing it consciously and deliberately. There are lots of different ways you can do it. Social media and posters are only one. And you can also do it with senior stakeholders interpersonally, at which point we call it lobbying. And it's super important. Lots of different ways you can do this, and different ways will suit you as an individual, and they will suit the people you're trying to work with. But have a look at this list and think about which ones you can deliver. Sending news and invitations to them directly. I have a WhatsApp group with a deputy mayor in a territory in which I work, and I send him little bits of good news all the time, and he retweets it, filling his need to have good news stories to share. I invite him to lots of different things. He often can't come. He chiefly can't come, but he knows about it and he feels somehow connected. Ask the person for a coffee. Ask them for help. Ask them to collaborate with you. Rule 1 in how to make friends and influence people. Ask them to work with you on something. Ask for their assistance. We've got problems thinking through how to deliver this. So-and-so has suggested this, but we're not sure. What do you think? Lots of different ways that you can make interpersonal information giving work for you. And one top tip, use your evaluation. I've refrained from saying do evaluation because I'm sure you are all evaluating. Evaluation is very dear to my heart. But use those evaluations, even if it's an informal team meeting going, well, how did that work? Use that information to share with your senior stakeholders. And just a reminder of how rich a seam of information evaluations can be. Look at the beautiful images here, the graphics, the numbers. It's a chance to gather it all up and send it out into the world again. Video, always super impactful, loved on social media, will get more clicks than anything else, and particularly good for sharing those stories about how things have changed. Dublin City Council Culture Company are brilliant at doing this. Do have a look at their website. And that takes us towards inspiring people. So you don't want them just to know about your project, though you do want that. You want them to care about it. You want them to feel something. You want them to be your advocates and promoters and care if it keeps going. And you need to put a bit of thought into this, because for some people it will happen automatically. You'll chime with their interests. They will be passionate about saving the planet. And in fact, I hope everyone is passionate about saving the planet. They'll be passionate about the role culture can play in making cities feel safer and connected. But you'll probably have to inspire that passion through showing people and getting them to understand what it is you're trying to do in a really visceral way. And you'll probably need to change it up. By coming into this EU environment today in this university, we're all stepping out of our day-to-day offices, filling in the emails, dropping off the forms and so on. And it makes a difference, I think, for me, definitely, and I hope for you, that you're learning in a different way. You're paying attention, your hearts are opening up, there are light bulbs going off in your head, changing the location, changing the pace. Always important. Tell the story. Once upon a time, the city was dreadful, but we did this, and now it's like this. Make it emotional, make it personal, and involve people. And thanks to Sally, I wanted just to share this beautiful, beautiful example that she was involved in Lambeth for a programme for getting all sorts of diverse young people in this outer neighbourhood into creative careers. And they ran a launch event, but one with a difference. Have a look at that top picture. The woman in the middle in the pink dress on her knees is the Deputy Mayor of London. She's sitting on the floor with the young people, and the young people designed and delivered this whole event in a way that made sense to them and was just filled with their energy, their ideas, their enthusiasm. They presented, they interviewed, they provided music, they decided that there should be a great big Caribbean lunch. They did the design for the event, which was really bright and friendly and welcoming. And lots of people came because this was a great and exciting thing to come to. It wasn't just another meeting. Cabinet members and London City representatives came, and they remember this. And I, in other areas of my life, have had this brought to my attention because of the emotions it inspired with people. And it's led to lots of invitations to collaborate and future funding. Professionally done, so people felt confident in things, but young people led, which is just a bit different, takes you out of the everyday, super successful. Another nice example, getting people involved. Rewilding, you probably got one locally, or tree planting of some sort, because we desperately need more trees. And we've got quite good as a society at involving children or volunteers, but don't stop there. Why not invite people like these four on the right, who are in fact the project funders? They came as a team, spent the day planting trees, added this man with a spade, who is a councillor. Get them to take part in your project, find a way. And you may not be doing something where that seems obvious. So one particular way that everyone can use is to make what you're doing a learning event. Not just an announcement, not sharing a report, but an opportunity to learn. And I've started getting more invitations like this, and maybe you have too, where you're not invited to hear about a piece of work that someone's done or some funding that's been won or a programme that's started. You're invited to take part. It might be a seminar where people are discussing the issue with lots of different voices. It might be something creative to make it a nice event. Again, think about that, winning hearts and minds, memorable atmospheres. And you could always use this to involve the senior stakeholders that you want to influence. They could be part of the panel. They could help you select people. And it's quite a nice opportunity as well for addressing that tricky issue of getting different political parties involved, because lots of people can have a voice and can take part. So don't just launch something, learn it. And every project can do that. Even if you can't invite people to plant a tree, you can definitely do a learning event. And that brings us on to alignment. The learning event very clearly links you to a big topic outside of just your city's issues, which can often be a real help. This isn't just about us. This is something that the city has to address because it's deemed important. I saw a question in the chat the other day about whether the Sustainable Development Goals do this. In my experience, they don't, because they are too wide, too big, too global, and politicians and senior stakeholders at our level don't feel the relevance. But it's that sort of thinking, and this is a lovely example that Ian sent in actual fact, of 33 city mayors who participated in a project to make a little video to send to Rio +30 about what they wanted as energy solutions. And all of those mayors, therefore, now know that 32 other cities also care about this. It's not just us. This is what everybody's doing, and this is important, and we are part of a movement. So you can think about aligning your project externally with a big, relevant issue to give it some extra oomph and impact. Thinking about internally, this is an example from a project I delivered recently for a culture strategy. In a culture, we don't have any money and we're always bottom of the list. So we've got quite good at identifying other stakeholders. So here's the strategy and the list of internal other stakeholders within the municipality that needed to be involved. But telling them that they needed to be involved and inviting their senior leaders wasn't going to cut it. What we needed to do was find in what way their issues could be solved by working with this strategy. Employment and skills. What's their pain point? What are they wrestling with at the moment? Aha, culture can help create high quality jobs. Tourism. What do you need to do? You need to grow more attractions for visitors, have more reasons for people to come here. Well, look what culture can do for you. Think through what your stakeholders need and find a way to solve their problems. And as I've indicated a couple of times, the problems could be very generic. It could be that a politician needs some good news to share, some evidence that she or he are making progress on an issue, or that they care about an issue, or that they're working citywide, including a particular neighbourhood. It could be that their problem is that they need information to share with others. It could be that they need a manifesto issue that they can put some weight behind. It could be that they are also looking at something going on in your city and you can solve it. You might be a green energy project, but you could solve someone else's problems for how to increase volunteering somewhere. And just to give you an example of how successful this can be, after we launched that cultural strategy, 4 months later, the borough's economic strategy, if you have a look at objective number 4 there, says craft a cultural offer. It got embedded that the cultural strategy mattered to other people. So that is what I think your alignment process should really be aiming at. If you can possibly manage it, get your plans embedded in other people's plans. It could be the manifesto, as I mentioned. Don't forget jobs descriptions. If you're working with colleagues in transport and you've got a shared project and they've got someone new coming on board, get some responsibility for that shared project written into their JD, an easy one to forget, but a lovely one if you can achieve it. Make sure that it's in your department's KPIs or another department's KPIs. That will help if you have senior managerial change internally. Get this, as we said, embedded in your city, approved in your city plans, in your local plans. Embed it everywhere. So here's a list of 10 things, and there have been plenty more as we've gone along, that I think everyone can do quite easily that will make a huge difference in trying to gather and maintain strategic support. I hope those are going to be useful to you and inspiring. And in case they're not enough, I thought I'd just add one more. Number 11, don't forget the pandemic. We all want to forget the pandemic in lots of ways and don't hitch any wagons to it completely because we hope that this particular time is passing. But right now, there are funding and strategic support opportunities for the post-pandemic recovery that definitely present opportunities for you to engage with other people's agendas, to align with the biggest relevance of the moment and find a way to open conversations and secure support. So good luck. Thank you.